You love harder because you were hurt first, not because you're broken, because you learned that love requires proof. When you were 7 or 10 or 15, someone you needed taught you something poisonous. That love is conditional, that affection must be earned. That if you weren't careful, attentive, constantly proving your worth, the people you needed would disappear, not always through words, sometimes through silence. Through a parent who only smiled when you achieved something, their face blank and distant when you simply existed. Through a friend who ghosted you without explanation after one wrong text. Through someone who made you feel like you were always one mistake away from being too much, their sighs heavy with disappointment. And your nervous system recorded that lesson in a language deeper than words, etching it into your amygdala like grooves in stone. It wrote it into your bones, your muscle memory, your gut reactions. Love equals vigilance. Presence must be purchased through performance. You internalized a simple equation that you're still calculating today in every relationship without even realizing it, running the numbers automatically whenever someone gets close. If I'm not enough, I'll be abandoned. I remember the first time someone told me I loved too intensely. I was 23, 3 months into a relationship, and I just spent 4 hours handwriting a letter explaining exactly why I appreciated them. The paper was 5 pages long, front and back, covering everything from how they listened to the specific way they laughed at my jokes. They looked uncomfortable. They said, "This is a lot, I didn't ask for this." And I felt that familiar punch of panic. The one that says you've done it again, you've been too much. You've scared someone away by caring too hard. I apologized. I actually apologized for loving them because somewhere in my wiring, intensity wasn't passion. It was a flaw, a glitch in my programming that made me unsafe to love casually. What I didn't know then was that my hypervigilance wasn't random. It wasn't a personality defect. It was an adaptation. A survival strategy formed in childhood, likely before age 7, and reinforced every time someone pulled away without warning or explanation. Here's what happens in your brain when you learn love is conditional. Your amygdala, the alarm system designed to detect threats, starts categorizing emotional distance as danger. Not abstract danger, survival-level danger. When you were young and someone withdrew their affection, it threatened your actual survival. Children are helpless. They need their caregivers to regulate their body temperature, to feed them, to keep them alive. So your brain learned to scan for micro-signals of disapproval. A slight tone change, a delayed text response, a moment of distraction during conversation. A hand pulled away too quickly, these became threats, and your nervous system developed a hair-trigger response, hypervigilance. You learned to read faces like some people read books, to track emotional temperature obsessively, monitoring pupil dilation and jaw tension, to notice when someone's energy shifts before they even realize it themselves. This isn't intuition. This is threat detection operating at maximum sensitivity, and it's exhausting. So you overcompensate. You love with intensity because you're trying to make yourself indispensable. If you're attentive enough, thoughtful enough, present enough, maybe you'll finally be safe from abandonment. You remember birthdays weeks in advance. You send the good morning text first. You ask about their day and actually listen to the answer. You notice when they're struggling before they say anything. You show up. You stay. You pour yourself out like you're trying to fill a void you can't even see. And here's the cruelest part. It works sometimes. People do appreciate it. They say things like, "You're so thoughtful," or "I've never had someone care like this." And that feels like evidence, proof that your strategy is working, that if you just love hard enough, consistently enough, you'll earn permanent safety. Except you can't, because you're not operating from abundance, you're operating from deficit, you're not loving freely, you're purchasing insurance against abandonment. Psychologists call this anxious attachment, but that clinical term doesn't capture the lived experience. It doesn't describe the feeling of checking your phone for the 7th time in an hour, stomach clenched, wondering why they haven't responded. It doesn't explain the way you replay conversations obsessively, searching for the moment you said something wrong, rewinding mental footage of every facial expression, every half-second pause before they answered. The way you can feel someone pulling away before they've moved an inch, because you've learned to detect emotional withdrawal the way animals detect earthquakes, sensing vibrations in the ground that precede disaster. You're reading seismic data nobody else notices, tracking microshifts in tone and texture. And the worst part, you're usually right. You do sense it before it happens. But not because you're psychic, because you're so hypervigilant that you create the tension you're afraid of. Your intensity, born from fear, becomes the very thing that makes people step back. They feel the weight of your need, heavy as gravity. There's a concept in trauma therapy called fawning. It's the 4th F in the fight-flight-freeze response system, first identified by therapist Pete Walker in his work on complex PTSD. Fawn means to please, to appease, to become whatever someone needs you to be to avoid conflict or abandonment. And if you were hurt early, if love was conditional, fawning became your primary survival strategy. You learned to read the room like a radar system and shape yourself accordingly. To be low maintenance. To never ask for too much. to anticipate needs before they're spoken, sometimes within seconds of someone's mood shifting, to make yourself useful, valuable, indispensable. Because if you're useful enough, maybe you're unleavable. This is why you love so hard, not because you have more capacity for love than others, but because you learned that love is the currency you trade for safety. And you've been saving up, spending lavishly, overextending your emotional credit limit, hoping to finally afford the security you never got as a child. The turning point for me came during a panic attack at 2 in the morning. I'd sent a vulnerable text hours earlier and got no response. My mind was spiraling through every catastrophic possibility. "They're done with me, I said too much, I'm too intense again." I was physically nauseous from anxiety, hands trembling, chest tight like someone was sitting on my ribcage. And then I realized something. I was treating silence like abandonment. A few hours of no contact, and my nervous system was responding like I was being left to die on a sidewalk, completely alone. That's when I understood. This wasn't about them or anything they'd actually done. This was about a wound so old I'd forgotten it was even there, buried since childhood. The hurt that made me love so hard wasn't healed by loving harder. It was like trying to fix a broken bone by running on it every single day. The intensity wasn't strength or passion. It was compensation, and compensation never heals the original injury. Here's what nobody tells you about healing this pattern. You don't stop loving intensely. You don't suddenly become casual or detached or cool. That's not the goal. The goal is to separate your capacity for deep love from your terror of abandonment, to love fully without the silent desperation underneath, to offer care without the hidden contract that says, "I'm doing this so you won't leave." This requires something uncomfortable. You have to let people disappoint you. You have to watch someone not text back and sit with the discomfort instead of immediately trying to fix it. You have to resist the urge to perform, to prove, to preemptively solve problems that don't exist yet. You have to practice being enough without the effort, not because you've stopped caring, but because you've stopped believing that love is something you earn through perfect behavior. That's terrifying when your whole identity is built on being the person who tries harder. I still love intensely, I probably always will, but now there's space around it, breathing room. I can care deeply about someone and also know that if they leave, I'll survive it, not because I've built walls or protected myself or learned to care less, but because I've started to believe slowly and consistently that my worth isn't determined by whether someone stays. That love isn't proof of value, that I can be both deeply devoted and not desperate. It's subtle, like the shift between holding someone's hand and gripping it. Some days I still catch myself performing, calculating, sending that extra text to confirm I'm thought of, staying late to prove I'm essential, trying to earn safety through effort and vigilance. Old patterns don't disappear overnight. They just lose their grip, the way a habit weakens when you finally see it for what it is. You start to notice when you're doing it, that tightness in your chest before you act. And that noticing creates a choice that wasn't there before. If you love harder because you were hurt first, you're not broken, you're adapted. Your intensity isn't a flaw, it's evidence that you survived something that required you to become hypervigilant to stay safe. And now you're carrying that survival strategy into situations that don't require it anymore. You're bringing emergency protocols to everyday moments. The work isn't to stop loving deeply, it's to stop loving defensively, to separate devotion from desperation. To offer yourself fully without the hidden belief that you have to earn the right to be kept. You never did. The people who hurt you first taught you the wrong lesson. They taught you that love is conditional, that presence must be purchased, that you're only worth keeping if you're useful, pleasant, low maintenance, and constantly proving your value. That was their limitation, not yours. Your capacity to love intensely is not the problem. In tomorrow's video, we'll explore why the people who are easiest to love are often the ones running from intimacy. Subscribe so you don't miss it. If this video resonated with you, hit subscribe. Uncomfortable Truths drops a new uncomfortable truth tomorrow and every day after on personal finance, relationships, mindset, and productivity, and more. Turn on notifications so you're first to see it. The truth is uncomfortable, but it's always worth it.